Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Season 2 of Conversations in Pop Culture, brought to you by my friends at Make Some Printing, the smarter way to print. I know printing your creative project can be confusing, stressful, but Make Some is here to make it easy. From their instant quote calculator that lets you get as many quotes as you want for free to their 24-hour customer support, Make Some is here to make sure your printing experience runs smoothly from start to finish. You can choose from a range of premium printing options and materials, and the company has also printed so many people I know's projects who have run Kickstarters. And a bunch of them have been on my show. A bunch of them are coming on my show in the next few months to talk about their projects and also using Mixum. And they offer services in the United States, Canada, Australia, and the UK. And Mixum can print and reach your audience anywhere in the world. So if you're ready to print smarter, not harder, head over to mixum.com. And they're running a very cool promotion right now where listeners of my show can actually drop my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab of the current order to get a 5% discount on their first order. And I know when people are funding Kickstarters, every percentage point matters. And so that is mixam.com. Again, type my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab of your current order to receive a 5% discount on your first order. And so now that my sponsorship read is over, I can finally introduce my guests. And obviously I have Taylor Campbell and Allison Sheppard, who are basically launched, I think, their first Kickstarter, I want to say. And I could be wrong on that, of Kane. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
So I am very excited because obviously you guys just launched and you're almost funded, and we're going to talk about that. But before we get into a little bit of the, I guess, inside baseball, I do want to talk about what is Kane and what is the basic premise of the comic for those who are hearing about it for the first time.
I've always described it as like Supernatural meets Buffy. So it's a little more adult oriented than Buffy was, but it does have the small town, setting and atmosphere. It's a bunch of group kids fighting demons, monsters, things of that nature.
And so obviously, we're going to get into the story in a second here, but it is very much a group is sort of fighting monsters, and it gets a little bit more complicated and possibly coming out of hell a little bit. And obviously there's some twists and turns here. So where did the inspiration for this story come from? Because obviously when we're going to dive into a little bit, I'm not going to ruin too much of it, but where did this idea come from, and even to do a book like this, because it hits a particular audience where it's got almost like an Riverdale Archie type feel and, Afterlife with Archie type feel to it.
Honestly, I've been working on this story for, 29 now? So about 18 years at this point. I came up with it while I was in middle school. I wrote it as a TV script, as a movie script, as all kinds of things. And then I had my son, and I wrote it as a novel, like probably about 50 pages of a novel, before someone told me that I was a little too descriptive with it and maybe I should try a comic book. So I did that, and that's where we are. I mean, I just wanted to write something original when I was younger, and the story just kind of carried over and got better.
And then obviously, Allison, how did you get involved in the project? Because obviously Taylor writes, a movie script, turns into a novelization of that script. And then obviously, when did it become the dawn of saying, hey, we're doing a comic book? And then how did you get involved in the project? Because it's very, very interesting how people wind up coming into projects and even their input into a project.
I went to high school with his wife, and I had no clue who he was. I had no clue what he was writing or anything. And once he decided he wanted to do a comic book, he was like, I need an artist, and he couldn't find anybody. And she just threw out my name. And I had no projects at the time, so I jumped on board and figured I'd figure it out, which is kind of funny because I've never had any experience with comic books. So I just figured it'd be something neat to get involved with, and I was right.
and so to even talk about that, because I don't know both your experiences as far as getting into comics, whether you were reading them, but is this your first outing with comics and in that genre? Or did you work on something a little bit before? Because obviously it's very interesting and the space is super fascinating right now to be involved in.
No, I'd never written anything comic book related before, honestly, until I started writing this. I don't think I'd ever read a comic book in my life. Yeah, but as soon as I started it, I, went back into stories that I thought I'd like, and now I'm always reading. Mostly indie stuff now, but I went through, the good ones like Preacher and Why the Last Man, things like that for a while there.
And then what about you, Allison? What is your experience with comics? Because you just said I think this was your first one, but obviously reading and then working on it, it's very different, and it's
Right.
very different because I comment on comics all the time, and I haven't written one yet. So,
Well, like I said, I never really drew them. I always hated drawing the same thing over and over again, especially if it was something I came up with. Like it was one and done, and that was it. Growing up, I didn't read a whole lot of comics, but my dad was really into it, so I kind of just always had them around, and I would copy a lot of the art from it, especially like Marvel. I really liked the over exaggerated muscular structures and like made up, like they would throw in muscles that don't exist, but it was fun because it still somehow made sense, and it was a great way to learn. And then now that we've started this, I started getting into it a little bit more.
and so obviously there's a lot of stuff, and obviously you produced 2 issues of this book, and so I want to dive into the story of it because it's very interesting because we have this character named Christian Lee Kane, and obviously he sort of disappeared. I think when he was 14, something sort of happened to him, and then he comes back, and he's a little bit of a bad boy type rebel, and now he comes back, and he's got some dark secrets and some dark past issues, and now he wants to go save his town and deal with these demons and these, I guess, extra paranormal creatures. And obviously, they got a bone to pick with him, or a particular person has a bone to pick with him. And so, what was it like really to build his character up? Because it's very complicated what's going on with him. And as you read issue 1 and then you go a little bit into issue 2, we start finding out a lot more complications. And so what was that like, really building him out and building that? Because it's super interesting what's going on with him.
Well, it's easy for me to build on these characters because all of them are based on people in my life. Like, even they look like people in my life. And Christian's character was based on me. As far as all the interpersonal things going on between him and his friends that aren't supernatural related, most of them are things that have happened in my life. So building on his character, it was pretty easy. As far as the age that he disappeared and, his story began before the story began, I just chose the time that I pretty much came up with the story in the first place. And a lot of the backstory we're going to build on after we're done with our first 6-story issue. Well, our first 6-issue storyline. And we're going to do like a, what's it called? Like an origin story.
You're going to do a one-shot origin type story.
Pretty much, yeah. But
and then I'm sorry, what were you saying?
It was fun trying to build on him, but it's just I can't exactly give you like one specific way that I came up with it because it's been such a build-up over the last like 2 decades, basically.
Because also I don't want to ruin certain things because this here gets tricky as an interviewer. Is that I don't want to go and ruin certain things because obviously I read issue 1 and I read the first half of issue 2, and it gets very, very interesting, and we find out certain things. But what adds more to this is that obviously Christian's girlfriend and him are about to have a kid. And I don't think that's a big spoiler because I think it's something that it's a little bit of a spoiler, but now that also changes this entire situation where they're going out to kill demons and these demons are trying to kill them. And now you're about to have a kid, and it changes the way you're doing things, and then an event happens. And so what was that like? Because it's very much a paradigm shift in the book, and it really starts happening towards the end of issue 1, beginning of issue 2, and it's super interesting. So what was that like to really build that up? Because now the stakes became higher.
I mean, it wasn't super difficult because the character of Mariska, she's a big character, but I wasn't going to put her in a lot of fight scenes anyway. And Yeah, it wasn't really too hard with her, honestly. And with him, he's a drunk and he's stoned half the time, so he really doesn't give a fuck at the moment.
But in a lot of ways, I think it does change the comic because it raises the stakes where now all of a sudden there's real skin in the game for
Oh,
these
absolutely.
characters. And because now all of a sudden, and I'm trying not to avoid what would happen sort of at the end of issue one and beginning of issue two, but something happens that could definitely change the way things are done. And it's so interesting to throw this in because I'm reading this book and I'm thinking it's going to be, a very fun, they're just going to kill demons. And then you find out they're about to have a kid. And then what happens? It's like, oh, snap. This is a real, we just went real adult real quick.
Yeah, well, how bad the danger will end up getting will end up driving him to have to do something that he really doesn't want to do. That's going to cost him a lot. So.
And so obviously that's something that people need to know and look out for. And then what makes this also very interesting at the same time is they run into a demon that doesn't want to be on, I guess, the demon side and the paranormal side and killing humans and eating humans and consuming them for food and energy. And then they don't necessarily, I think, turn this demon back per se, but they make her slightly more human and like she's still vampiric, I guess is the word here. And so what was that like in doing that? Because that raises a bunch of questions of A, what this person can do because they can't go out in the sun. B, what connection they have to this threat that's looming. And then three, or I must have said two, that was two, three, trading your own kind. And that's a big issue where, turning on your own kin in a lot of ways. And that's a whole deep philosophical issue. And so what was that like throwing this into the book? Because it raises a lot of questions. And I know the first issue doesn't explore it, and I don't know where you're going exactly with it, but what was that like throwing that in there? Because you're planting seeds in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, with Olivia, it's not really any spoilers because I don't know how much I'm going to build on her, like backstory for a while. So, I mean, mostly she's pissed off. Her body was taken without any type of permission towards said demon who was inhabiting her body, and she wants payback, and she will work with whoever she has to get it.
There's a lot of stuff in it, and then also it goes into this idea where even going into further into your world, obviously you introduce a witch character that's also in a similar thing called Trina, and obviously that might be referencing a very, very famous comic artist. I'm not too sure, but Trina obviously is a paranormal witch, has abilities, and so there are good demons in this world opposing, I guess, the bad demons, and obviously it also sort of highlights the allies and the network of demon killers that are around here and demon hunters, and it gives a little bit more insight that there's obviously a big paranormal force on the other side of these characters, and they're very much facing an insurmountable force to some degree. And so it's very cool introducing that and opening up that world, and I thought it was very well placed.
Yeah. With that, the whole network, I may have as a child ripped that off from the Hellmouth from Buffy. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not sure, but that's probably what happened. But yeah, the character of Trina, she's probably one of my favorite characters, especially once Allison gets done with her magic. Trina comes out looking spectacular every time. She is good for the page, man.
And so what is that like, Allison? Because there's a lot of characters. Each of these characters, some of them seem very much generic, what you would expect, and others are not. And some of them obviously are more animated than others. But there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of moving characters. And what is that like for you as the artist to draw? Because you have to bring all of them to life and really push them forth into this story. And I would imagine some are easier to sort of nail down than others.
Absolutely. So it was kind of hard at the beginning just because he obviously has people that these are based off of, and I've never met any of them, I don't think, aside from Taylor. But when I started, I only met him for maybe an hour. So I didn't know a whole lot about him either. So I kind of kept bugging him. I'm like, can you tell me about these people's personality? Because like I could read what he wrote, but I also kind of wanted behind the scenes. So whenever he'd be like, and she scowled, I'm like, how much attitude does she have? And like, is he pretty just like oblivious? And he started going in on like, this guy's a stoner, this guy's like a bitch. Like, am I allowed to swear? I'm sorry.
Yeah, go right ahead.
But it's definitely getting easier because now I'm starting to like really get to know the characters, I guess. And I think I put a lot of myself into them. I think that's why Trina becomes so interesting, because she's the one I'm like, whoa, and I can really like play around with her. But it's just been a whole experience because, well, like I said, I usually draw one thing. Like if I make a character, I draw him once and then it's done. And this is like, draw him from this angle, draw him from that angle, draw him doing this. And it's been an experience.
And even to go into that, because comics are very different than every other medium in a lot of ways. They're similar as well to a lot of mediums, but it's the idea that you're never ever really drawing the same thing over and over again, but you're also drawing the same characters over and over again. And so what is that like for you? Because obviously you have, Taylor's writing, and he's giving you insight, and he's giving you, notes, I guess, whether that's, in person or on a phone or on a Zoom call or something like this. And then you also have to say, okay, how do I want to invent this character? Because I'm going to be drawing this character unless they get killed for the next 30 issues or so. And so what is that like going into your head when you design? Because I think a lot of people who are artists and even, writers say, maybe I'll get 6 issues. And then, well, newsflash, you're 100 issues in and you're like, man, I would have designed that character differently.
I'm already there. Because when I jumped into this, like I said, I've never really done comic before, and I also wasn't really working digitally before. So I didn't really anticipate what my style would be or how they would look just going forward. I ended up, like, Christian is supposed to look kind of like Taylor, and at some point, I don't know how, but I lost that. And if you compare my style between issue 1 and issue 2, it's already changed drastically, and it bugs me so much. But we hit a point where it was just like, you just got to make it, like, push through, like, do it anyway. It's okay. We'll come back maybe later. But like, well, he's got no problem with my art, but the second I send it, I'm like, wait a minute, I need to go fix that and that and that and that. And she's like, no, you're done. Let's move on.
She acts like the art is far different. It's really not. The first 10 pages of the first issue look the most different than the rest of it. But after that, it might be a gradual, like, increase in quality, but it's not like, boom, one page looks like something and the next one looks like something else.
Yeah, and it gets very, very interesting because obviously, I've read it, and I say this very, very nicely, where first few pages, look like one thing, but then when you get into the middle of the book, it starts looking a lot more succinct, and it looks like one artist did the entire thing, and you can tell the consistency, and even going into issue 2, the consistency is very much similar throughout it. And unfortunately, sometimes with comics, you got to jump in, and then, you got to swim to one side, and then you figure out what you're doing exactly. And there's been plenty of books that have done that, so I completely get it, but I think for the most part, unless you're really looking for that in the first 10 pages, it's hard to spot, because if you just open it up, and it took me like 2 or 3 reads to sort of pick up a little bit of the differences. And I'm critically analyzing too, and I'm reading the first 3 times, so I'm much harder than everybody else on the planet, I promise. I'm not easy, guys. I'm not easy. So and then obviously we sort of at the end, they're trying to figure out what's going on, and we're introduced to Lilith. And so what was this like, bringing her into it and introducing her and the entire introduction and even drawing her? Because bad guys got to look a certain way. They got to act a certain way. They got to be artistically visually, that you see it and immediately without any words being spoken? And so what was this like between the two of you really bringing that out and creating it?
Well, the cool part about Lilith for me is the story that I have for her. I like built it all out for her, even past this, past this and her backstory. I built it out in like a matter of like 3 days. I had so much material in my head that'll never actually make the page because it's all backstory that I don't actually need to give to anybody, but it's all really, really cool. And she was a cool character to work on.
And then what was it like building her out from an artistic position? Because obviously that's your more field, Allison. And so what was that like? Because obviously having the written background and the stuff that we're never going to know is great, but then also saying, okay, if I know a little bit about her backstory that we're never going to get to, how do I make sure that she looks the part?
That's actually kind of funny because when I first made her, I wasn't given a whole lot of information on her. Basically, it was just like a hot brunette chick, and she's dressed kind of like a slut, like make her wear a corset and like her hair's long. I'm just like, okay. And I like read a little bit about how just like the way she talked and like the way she was standing. I was like, she just seems like she is confident and she's like doesn't care who she crushes. So I kind of played with that. But now that she's appearing more and more, I'm definitely gonna flesh her out a lot better, I think.
And we're gonna get to issue 2 in 1 second, but I gotta quickly mention my second sponsor here, and I'm gonna pull him up because he's a friend of mine, and his book is Frontier Forever, Tomorrow Yesterday, and it's an amazing book. Obviously, it's got 17 days left, and it is very much a cool book where it is what I view as a 12 stories, technically 11. He doesn't want me to say 12. I know it already. And one of them is coming out. The 12th one's coming, guys. And it's pretty much sort of how we got into his main book, Regenesis. And it's dealing with sort of Earth is embargoed off from society, and now somebody is sent down there to fix it. And, well, that's the first 2 issues of Regenesis is pretty much the main story. And then Tomorrow Yesterday, Frontier Forever, Tomorrow Yesterday, is sort of a time period that's separated by hundreds of years between each and every story about how we slowly got there, similar to Roboticlips on how that's built out. And it's really an amazing story, and I've read parts of it. And it's one of those things where if you're looking for a cool plug-and-play world to buy into and pick up and on the campaign, you get every single thing. You get his novel, Regenesis, and as well as Frontier Tomorrow Yesterday, and get the whole package of everything that's out so far. And that's something that's super cool, and he's doing great with it. So obviously that's right now on Kickstarter, and you're going to get a bunch of different art from a bunch of different people. And some people you might have heard of and others you have not. And it's just a fantastic project, and I legitimately cannot wait for him to put it out there and get it out there, and I'm really hoping it gets funded. So obviously, if you're looking for a plug-and-play world, as I stated, this is perfect because you never know where this world's going to pop up, and I got a feeling something very cool with this. But now back to your book. So obviously, Lilith does something very, very interesting to Christian, and I got to ruin part of this a little bit, where she sort of sends him to purgatory. I know, it's a spoiler. Everybody can deal with it. And that changes a lot of stuff that's going on in the book. And it, again, makes the book go very, very adult very quickly. And so what was that decision to go right into a big game-changing move in issue 2?
Well, when I wrote the first one, I had that already planned out because I'd written it so many times before. And then after that, I had a couple ideas of what I wanted to do, and I didn't really want to drag out any longer than I already had. I wanted to get into something. So I went with that storyline because I thought that it would be cool. It gives a little bit of background for Christian, and it puts some of the secondary characters right up front so you can get to know them a little bit.
And even to go further into this, because it opens up, I think, two stories very, very nicely, because now it's Christian getting out of purgatory. And then it's also his friends helping him get out of purgatory, but then they're also dealing with it. It's also, we're getting introduced to what do they do when their, de facto leader is not around anymore? How are they acting? And it creates a very interesting discussion. And then obviously when you have a kid on the way and now that's in play, and that's why I brought all this up, because this really raises the stakes, I feel. And it changes what's going on, because now we're seeing how everybody acts. We still have this demon problem. We don't know what's going to happen with this demon chick who wants to end Christian, because let's face it, you can't just stop with him being injured, and he has to get out, and also he might have an old fling sort of thing that's not finished, that's dead, that there's some back history and some other stuff going on. And so a lot of stuff just opened up, I feel, because I feel like issue 1 was just sort of the runway, and now we're in the air with this entire story at this point. And so I feel like we went from a very narrow starting point into a much wider range of possibilities. And it's super, super cool to do it this way, because usually this is what happens in issues 3s and 4s of long stories.
Absolutely. And there were a couple characters that needed to be introduced that this opened it up perfectly. The character Stella, she's one of my favorites, but introducing my little brother into this book was awesome. He's in Iraq right now, so seeing him on the page is pretty sweet.
And then also from an artistic standpoint, because I've obviously read a preview copy of issue 2, and the setting for issue 2 is very different, where purgatory isn't blatant hell in your world. It's quite peaceful. It's sort of the Lost without, all the enemies and the back half of the plane trying to kill the front end of the plane in Lost. It's very much a paradise where everything nice can happen. And so what is that like to have that? Because it's almost sweet. And to some degree, I think Christian could just stay there and be pretty happy and be pretty, tranquil. And maybe it's not so bad for especially with your old fling and your old, partner and somebody you had some relationships with. And so it's very interesting to create that. So what was that like to create from an artistic position? Because it is very much a paradise.
It was really interesting because issue 1 is based off of the town he grew up in, so I have a whole bunch of stuff I'm supposed to work off of, whereas this whole paradise thing, I was basically just inventing it completely. He had the idea it's kind of beach jungle mountainy, and I was like, okay, and I basically created my own world, which was kind of fun. And because it's almost magical, I can make it not make sense if I want to, which most of it does, but I wasn't so worried about, this plant can't be next to that plant because one's from Pennsylvania and one's from Hawaii or whatever. And that was nice, and it just really opened a creative door for me, I think, because I don't know, a lot more interesting things are happening, so I get more involved.
That's something that's really cool about this entire purgatory thing as well, where it's very much a more free reign world, where the real world is very rigid in your story, and it should, because it has to make sense that way, where we're in the real world and these demons are coming after us. In purgatory, all of a sudden, chairs can appear out of nowhere to make you very content, so you could sit and look at a cool, and have, basically coconut moonshine, for lack of a better word, or whatever your alcoholic drink would be, because you could substitute whatever you want, apparently, in purgatory. So that must be nice, as both from the writing and even the art, that you have that freedom to do it.
Yeah. With purgatory, came from a couple angles with it, because sometimes you get purgatories like hell, but I kind of went with the fact that for how long the argument was that unbaptized babies went to purgatory. So I figured it would probably be nice there. And the grayscale, that was kind of a supernatural ripoff, because they had the grayscale for their purgatory, and I thought it looked really cool. So I thought we'd go with that to make it, look a little different.
And then it's also cool, and you did a nice trick as well, where there is an escape from purgatory that is on the table if you are technically not dead. And it's very much a quest, and it's involving doors, and it's involving memories and some other things. And obviously there is going to be pain associated with Christian's escape. And so there's going to have to be sacrifices. And again, this book is not just a bunch of friends getting together, killing demons. There's real sacrifices that are about to happen. There's real pain about to happen. There's going to be choices that have to be made, both, I think, when, in the real world, as well as for Christian to escape. And so what is that like? Because that's what book 2 sort of kicks off, where the end of book 1 sets it. Book 2 really goes. And then I feel when we get into books 3 and 4, we're really going to start seeing those choices being made. And, obviously the art reflects that. And so what is that like to go down that path? Because it is very interesting when you don't just have a fun cheesecake superhero book where everything's going to be all right. This is real. And that's something, and I have a follow-up question, but I'm going to let you answer that one first.
For me, it's cool to lay down tracks that will eventually cause problems in the future that you will see, follow up and come to fruition. It's probably one of my favorite parts of writing this book, is showing things that are happening now that will have real consequences later. It's really cool. It's fun.
It is fun to plant seeds purposely and understand where something's going, and then slowly watering them.
Yeah.
And then seeing something that you laid out in issue 2 hit in issue 5 very, very successfully, and how it all links up. And I'm a big anime fan, and there's plenty of shows that I watch that do that. And when it's done right, it is so rewarding. Yeah. And then also, I'm curious, because you're reading a lot of indie stuff. I don't know, Allison, are you reading more indie comics or more mainstream at the moment?
A little bit of both. I don't have a whole lot of time to like sit down and really read. It's more like flipping through to get reference and ideas for the art. Just a lot of classic Marvel. I have like a whole shoebox, I guess, full of them. Not a shoebox. It's like the box that the stores keep them in. But I've got a whole box. And
so the reason why I asked this is that I have very much made an exit out of Marvel and DC, and even I'm more into Image, but I've clearly gone even lower than that. I've gone into Dark Horse and Dynamite, and then I've gone into things like Titan, and I'm a big Zenescope fan. And what I'm finding is that the entire story, which is what your story is that, and what Marvel, your story is not this, is that they do a 6-run arc in Batman and nobody dies. There's no major consequence. Batman in the first issue gets broken. He spends the next 4 issues getting broken a little bit and then getting out of it and then solving the problem, and then they do the thing again, and he has a few battle scars, but 50 issues later, nobody's majorly dead. And same with Marvel, and I find with Image and Zenescope that there are real consequences for characters' actions. And I think, and I'm curious how you two feel about this, where on indie, I know creators have no problem killing off people that are liked in books in the 3rd issue and not bringing them back, and there's no redemption. And like, I'm doing 12 issues of this book, and in issue 5, this character's dying. And then they kill the character, and people are like, why'd you do that? And so, but again, it goes back to real consequences. And so how do you guys feel about why indie is possibly dominating more, and people are flocking to indie comics and books like yours, where there are real consequences, versus running away from Marvel and DC and parts of Image?
I hate killing characters. It
which
is
is funny because we hung out the one day and we were talking about the comic, and he was like, "Oh yeah, this person dies in the next issue," and I just what? Because
she
I
was so
read
upset.
through everything. I got so mad at him.
So maybe that's a better question: is that why do you hate killing characters? Because I like when characters die because I feel like it creates legitimacy. Where if you're writing a 30-issue arc in issue 10, you kill somebody off. This comic just became serious. It just became what is known as a key issue, especially if it's a key character, or if his girlfriend loses the baby because of an attack. There's a real stake now. I feel when you kill Batman and you bring Batman back, there's no stake in the book anymore because in 5 issues from now, I'm going to get Batman back and Bruce is back. Great. So, but when you don't bring back a character, like when Gwen Stacy got killed in Spider-Man 121, and she didn't come back for like 45 years, that's a real commitment on Marvel's part. And that's a real stake, okay? And then when she came back, I was giddy as a schoolgirl, okay? And I'm 28, so that she got killed way before anything. I'm happy that he did what he did because it was fantastic, the snapping of the neck. It was perfect. It was perfect. But my point is that there's real stake in the Marvel universe at that point, up to when she was brought back. And so I'm curious why you don't want to kill characters, because it feels to me that creates stake in a book.
Oh, I just don't like to kill them because I know them all in real life. Yeah. It's harder when you know these people and you're actually watching your friends die on the page. I mean, some of them I probably wouldn't be too upset. But, there's a few characters who there's little chance that they're going to die. Like the character Nina, she's probably not ever going to go anywhere because in real life, she's gone. She died in February, so she'll probably be around forever in the book.
So let's talk about that, because I don't want to dive too much into it, and you guys can talk as much as you want. But obviously, losing friends, it's not fun. Things happen, and you're doing something very interesting with this book because obviously, I think the person's based off is Lena.
Yeah,
and so you're doing, I think, 50% of the proceeds are going to help her daughter out and get a head start. And so what prompted that? Because that's something that's very different. And I don't know, I'm sure you guys know what a charity book is in comics. I don't know if this is, quote unquote, a charity book like, we're having How to Avoid Landmines in Africa that DC put out. Yes, it's a real book. I'm not even joking. It's a real book, and it was beyond beneficial. It sounds like a crazy idea, but when you have Superman telling you how to avoid a landmine, and an African kid is reading it and avoids the landmine because Superman told him, so it's a big deal. But what prompted this? Because it's not a charity book, but it's also very charitable. And so, what was the decision in that? What prompted this? And what's going on with all that?
When she died in February, they ran one of those Facebook things where you can donate to help pay for things. At the time, I didn't have any money, and what was left of it was going to her daughter, who's 3, and I wanted to do something to help, so I reached out to her sister, Lena's sister, and asked them if they still had something that I could do, and she said that they had the savings account that they set up for her. So I asked her if she was cool if I just, when I ran this, I just gave them 50% of whatever the profits were, and she can put that in for her daughter. And she said, yeah, so that's what we're doing.
And so to even go further off of this, because part of also why you can do this, when we're speaking off air, is that, or you might have mentioned it briefly, is that you have paid for all the art up front. You have paid for all the writing, your colors, your inker, and so you don't have any what is known as debt on the book. And so whatever you're funding on Kickstarter is essentially printing costs, I think, right?
Yeah.
And then everything beyond that, and well, if you print in high enough volume, there you go. And so obviously there is a different way on how this was done, and that's part of the reason why. And I don't know if Allison, you're getting a page rate, and we don't have to go too much into the details, or if you're an equity partner, which also could change it, because obviously I was speaking with Livid Comics, and they're equity partners in their venture, which helps to cover art costs, because one of them's an artist, one of them's a writer. And so obviously it's very, very interesting what you're doing. And so there's very much a business plan put in place with this, which is something that I'm assuming there's a business plan put in place with this to be able to do this, because when you're doing something like this, you need to have a battle plan, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, it's kind of changing over time, I think, slowly. Coming into it, I severely undersold myself, much to his benefit. Like,
I've been there. I've been there. I'm not going to pretend.
And as it goes on, and I'm being asked to do more, obviously I'm getting paid more, and eventually I'll get like a certain percentage of whatever sales. But I enjoy doing it, so I don't mind being paid less, I guess. Especially in the long run, he's got more and more stuff for me to do. If it was a one and done thing, I'd be like, give me more. But
yeah, and also, once you get on a certain issue, once it's issue 4 or 5 of a book, it changes, because the book is more guaranteed, and also there's a trade coming, and there's a bunch of other stuff coming. With issues 1s, there are always risks, and it's tricky because you never know how a market is going to react. And so I'm actually super curious on that, because obviously you guys are releasing issues 1 and 2 in the same Kickstarter. And I don't think you're going to mind, but you ran a Kickstarter and it didn't do well the first round. And obviously Kickstarter has become a very interesting platform, where now there are companies who do your YouTube video or your preview video. There are people who do, your copywriting. There are people who back and then fulfill rewards. And all that didn't exist. And I don't know, when was the last time you did your Kickstarter per se? Well, what year was it? Just.
I believe it was at the end of 2018 when we did it, and I had no plan in place whatsoever.
So 2015?
2018.
2018, my mistake. But even still, in 2018, a lot of this stuff was just beginning. Something like BackerKit was in its infancies as an idea. What didn't exist. There are companies that I have relationships, and what they do is that all they do is they just do people's videos on Kickstarter, and they charge anywhere from like $100 to like $1,000 to do these videos. And that industry has boomed. And obviously, the reason why I bring all this up is that Kickstarter in 2021 and going into 2022 in about 4 months is a very, very different animal. And so what was this like for you coming back into Kickstarter 3 years later, when it's night and day? There's no comparison to 2018 Kickstarter, to 2021 Kickstarter.
Yeah, well, I started studying people's Kickstarters after mine failed, because I put 2 paragraphs up about the story and what we were going to do with the money, and that was it. And a banner, a bad-looking banner, nonetheless. So when I started backing other books is when I really started like looking at what people did and how they looked. And then I semi-mastered the cheapest version of Photoshop that they make, and it's called Paint 3D, and started making like tags for each part of like the tiers and the characters and stuff like that for the actual campaign. And it looks far more professional this time, and I have a feeling we're going to do much better this time.
And then also, I'm going to ask you a question. In 2018, and I said we're going to get to the goal part of this, because I actually think this is super interesting. I think people can take actually a page out of your book to some degree. No pun intended right there. But what was your goal in 2018 for this project?
It was 500.
And what is the goal right now?
100.
And you're 77% funded for a reason, because that, and this is where I'm going with this, because it's this idea that once something gets funded, once it reaches its goal, people get very excited, people feel very comfortable. And I'll tell you my mentality, and I'm curious what you guys think about it, is that I have a certain amount of money every single month to allocate to a Kickstarter project. So that means that if you have 20 days left and I allocate on day one and you're running it for 21 days, I have no idea how long you can run a Kickstarter, which is really bad considering I've been doing this for almost 2 years now, interviewing people who run it. I think, can you run a 21-dayer?
You can run a 2-month one.
You could run a 2-month one. Wow. I didn't know you could run 2 months.
Run it for, this one's 30 days, but you can run them for up to 60.
That's good to know. That's good to know. I knew you could run a month. I knew you could run like a 2-week. But the idea is that if you're running a month and I'm back on day 30, that money is gone. Where I have X amount of money to back a project and then I'm done. And if you don't make your goal, I didn't lose my money in my world, but on my books, that money is gone because I can't go and back another project. So when something is immediately funded, or I know it's going to get funded just based on who's doing it, I am more likely to back. And it's a vote of confidence because it's an economic decision. And maybe I'm the odd one out here, but that's how I view it. So if I see your project is 77% funded, your goal is $100, that to me, and I'm interested in the story, those three things line up, and now I have more of a vote of confidence. And I'm curious how you two think about it like that, because, obviously when something, that's the way I view it. So I'm just curious how you guys view low goals and things like that.
That's exactly why I did it, because I know that there are a lot of people like you and like me who would rather back something knowing that they're going to get it. You're more willing to take a chance on something if you know you're going to get it.
And also, did you feel that all of a sudden, because the thing that's always fun is that you could fund more than 100% on Kickstarter. And so it's great when I see a project that funded 500% or 600%. It creates a very interesting situation because people say, oh, it's 600%. I was interviewing somebody on Indiegogo, which is a competitor, and their trading card set last night, Rusty, did over 600%. Now that goal was only like $3,000 or $4,000, but it's the idea that if your goal is $500 and then you funded $3,000, well, that means that a bunch of people liked it a lot more than what you anticipated. It also is the idea where you're over delivering and you under promised, and that's a good thing. Is that it's better to deliver more than to not deliver, to deliver less. And so that's another thing too. I think that is very important because it affects the Kickstarter algorithms.
Exactly. And it was, other than, making sure that Lena's daughter gets as much as she possibly can, my biggest thing is I want as many people to get these books in their hands as possible, because that is more people who are going to back me on the first day with the next book. So that was my thinking.
And then also it's the idea that on Kickstarter, you gather emails, you gather information, you gather, data. There's so much stuff that you can gather off of Kickstarter, where even if you only do $1,000, for this campaign, all of a sudden you're going to have a bunch of email lists, you're going to have a bunch of data, you're going to have a medium income level to some degree, have calculated age, sex, all that stuff. And then that further helps you narrow down and make your next campaign for issues 3 or 4, work better, because now you understand who to hit precisely. And there's so much data that can be driven. As you can tell, I love operations and logistics, and I love data analysis.
It'll make advertising on Facebook so much easier, because I'll know who to put in my analytics to aim for.
I mean, I could tell you right now who to put in your analytics, but that's a different discussion for a different day.
We'll talk about that later.
We'll talk about that off the air. It's the logic, actually. But the Facebook advertising is a nightmare. There are so many better ways to advertise now. But anyway, having said all that, I do want to get into rewards, because you have some interesting, and one of the things I like about your campaign, and I back a variety of campaigns and interview a bunch of people, and some people, and I'm not going to name because he's a friend, but he has legitimately like 70 options. And so before I bash him, because I know he's going to see this, and I know I'm going to get a text from him. It's going to be bad. He has regular covers, he has metals, he has foils, and then he has special edition foils. So he takes one cover, and then he might have, 15 covers, but then he has 4 of each, or he has 3 of each. And then all of a sudden, that's how you get a bunch of covers. You have nude covers, and you have a variety of other things. And so you guys, I think, have, 8 or 9, maybe 10 at the most?
Yeah, I think it's 8.
And so obviously, what was this like keeping it simple? Because the simpler for me, the easier it is to just say, hey, I'm getting option A, B, C, D, or E, or F. So what was that like from both just pushing out rewards level, as well as just making sure your first one was easy, keeping the goal low, and not overstretching yourself? Because that's a common mistake made in Kickstarter.
Well, I know I'm not the only one who gets confused when going through some of these Kickstarters that have a bunch of options. And I understand why people do it because, people like options. But like when you go through them and then you go to the actual reward tiers, you're trying to figure out which one is the one that you were looking at on their menu option. And I just figured it'd be easier if I just did first book, second book, first book, second book with the NSFW covers, and then the double books, and then the 4-book option.
It's funny that you say people like options, because a lot of what I learned building a small business is while they like options, they don't like too many options because they get like purchase paralysis. So if you have too many things, people are like, I don't know which one I want, and then they end up not getting anything. So by having a fewer amount of things, but still having something to choose from, someone's more likely to get it.
Yeah, in which that I like when somebody has legitimately 50 options because I am a very, very driven, and I am very much a profiled customer, meaning that I know exactly what I want, I know what I want, and you can give me 300 options, and I'm going to figure out which one I want because I walk into a Kickstarter. Before I even look at the Kickstarter, I know exactly what I'm looking for on a cover. And I'm a cover guy. So I know exactly what I'm looking for, who I'm looking for, why I'm looking for it. And you can give me 50 options and I know where I'm going with it. But not everybody's like me. Not everybody has been doing this. Not everybody has a particular taste that obviously has affected my business relationships with certain companies. And obviously I'm a big Zenescope fan, which affects what I gravitate towards. So when I look at Kickstarters, obviously that's where I gravitate to, is covers like that, or homage covers are big. Certain covers just make me smile and they brought good memories, and I'm going to gravitate towards that. If you watch my Monday interview with Larry Higgins, of all people, you understand that I backed live for a reason, and it's just one of those things. But I think that keeping it simple is very, very smart. Also with a low goal as well. And I think people can take a page out of your books for that, because if you're running a project and it's less than $500 and you have 50 options, you're insane. And that's a recipe for failure in a lot of ways. And I think you guys are very much a recipe for success by having few options. So having said that, I do want to talk about them. So obviously digital, that's the easiest way if you're outside the US. Right now, shipping is $1 more, I believe, with the post office due to the holiday season.
Awesome.
Went up Monday, guys. I'm an eBay seller. I am not happy about it. Okay. I'm not happy about it. My clients aren't happy about it. Nobody's happy about it because it affects how I can sell, and it's not fun. And I had to go and change 150 listings. So that took like 3 hours. Okay, not fun. So if you don't want to deal with that, digital is the way to go, guys. It's also cheaper. It's also gets pretty much sent to you, and you don't have to worry about losing it because, well, it's in a file for you somewhere in the cloud. And then obviously there's Kane 1 if you just want to do the regular standard cover. There's Kane 2, which I have right here. Obviously that's Kane 1, because it's the idea that you have, backs, and that's my thing. That's my friend right there, criticizing me, attacking me because he knows I'm talking about him. This is him too, which, you know, who doesn't love a naked chick with a shotgun? That's just me. And so we might as well talk about this cover because you know it's the Z-rated cover you're gonna get, everybody.
The best part is with what you just said, though. We did a convention like a month ago, and this guy came up with like his 10-year-old son, and he's like, "You want to get this? Nothing better than topless chick with a shotgun and a tattoo." And the kid bought it. It was great.
And so obviously those are the standard covers for you. And then you guys did some nude covers. And I think Octavia Moon did both of them.
Yes.
If I got the name right.
Yes, she's awesome.
And so the two things. A, how did you find her? I think it's a her, right?
I believe so. I've never met her in person, but I would assume so.
Her, he, I'm not too sure because I'm not familiar. But A, how'd you meet them? And then B, what prompted nude covers? Because it is tricky right now. There's a big divide in the comic community, especially in Kickstarter groups. Do you need nude covers to sell your book? Do you not need nude covers? You know, who's buying nude covers? Do you cater to the subsection of the audience that wants this stuff? Do you say no? Do you choose which characters get a nude cover? Because certain people, you know, I'll throw out a name, CB Zane. He has a character called Might, and Might won't get a nude cover, but Scorpiana will get a nude cover. That's another one of his properties. And so what prompted this decision? Because I got a feeling some of these characters have no problem being naked.
Well, I found her in pretty much the same way I found you. We were just in a group, and I constantly saw her posting stuff.
People find me in much more odd ways. Let's just leave it at that.
But weird thing, a couple years ago, I reached out to her to do something, and I don't think she remembers it. And she didn't like my page rate and told me to go fuck myself. I think she forgot. And I had more money to work with this time around, so I paid what she wanted. But she's awesome. She's really good. She's super talented. And as far as choosing to do it, I was not going to do it for the longest time. I'm like, I'm not going to sully it. I'm not going to sully the story with nude covers. I'm not doing it. And then I'm like, what's it going to hurt? There are people who like them. And pretty much every female character in this book will look good naked. So...
And so obviously, because one of the things that was spoken about with me and Tom Hutchinson is that somebody buys a variant and they put the variant away and they put it and go get it graded for whatever reason because they like the art. Well, Tom wants people to read his book, but at the end of the day, you also want to get funded and you want to cross the finish line. And he said, what do I care that they bought the book and they didn't read it? Because I got to cross the finish line and I got funded. And so what is your attitude on that? Because obviously I think you want people to read your book, but if 30% of the people buy the new covers and say, hey, I just want to look at this artwork, I don't want to open it up, but you get across the finish line and then 70%, like how do you figure out that? Because it is tricky when you want people to read your stuff. And obviously I've written on my website and I want people to listen to this, podcast, but if somebody says, hey, I'm here legitly to skip to the reward section of this because I want to know what the rewards are, that's fine too, because at least they watched a part of it.
Well, I look at it two ways. I do want people to read the book. That's like my main goal is for people to read the book. That's also why I made the all covers option so that they can get all the covers and they can put the 2 nude covers away where they want them. But also, Eazy-E said it best whenever they were burning his CDs. They bought the motherfuckers. They can do whatever they want with them.
And then obviously digital, because I think if somebody buys an all pack, there's a digital copy.
Everything gets a digital copy.
And so that's also the answer where I don't think you mind if somebody says, hey, I want to keep my book in pristine edition, and I'm going to read it digitally because you want the book to be read.
That's why with every single one, if you just get number one, you get the PDF with it.
So I mean, I like that too, and I know campaigns that don't do that, and I think it's the biggest mistake because
it's free.
It's free. It's majorly cost effective, and it's also the idea that you could also send the digital right as the campaign is funded and you're off to printing. You legitimately, if you hit your goal, you could send everybody who backs it immediately a digital copy of your book. Once it closes on day 33 of when 3 days of this campaign is over, you can legitimately, after the surveys are sent everybody a digital copy of your book. And it makes me happy because guess what? Shipping is going to take forever. It's not going to get better. It's not going to get better, guys. It's not getting better with shipping. I'm just saying. I've had projects that have taken me months to get places. So I get it. So I mean, I love it. And then obviously, I kind of want to back out of your project, and I am a little bit curious because you two, or I don't know if it was both of you that went to a con together or if just one of you went, but where do you see the convention scene going? Because obviously, COVID's kicking up. We haven't had cons in mass in over 20 months. I know a lot of my friends are getting accepted into Emerald City Comic-Con at the later half this year, C2E2, wow, I can't speak. And where do you see the con scene going? Where do you see it changing? How do you see it adapting? And do you see what do you think is going to happen in the next 4 to 6 months with it? Because I'm super curious. What you guys view as creators, because I'm on the other side of this, where I'm skipping till the end of June of next year.
I'm not really sure where it's going. It looked like, it was getting better and everything was opening up, and I didn't think the Delta variant was going to cause everyone to start closing down, but now kids are going to have to start wearing masks to school again. So I don't know. Hopefully they keep them open as long as possible.
Yeah, I'm not touching New York Comic Con. Let's just leave it at that, because that thing's going to be a disaster. I'm not touching Anime NYC because Anime NYC I think is in September, and that is the trial run for New York Comic Con. Officially or unofficially, that is how that con is going to run. However, Anime NYC runs is how New York Comic Con is going to run. So if you're going to New York Comic Con, the con to look out for to understand how it's going to work is Anime NYC. If Anime NYC is a disaster, New York Comic Con will be 10 times worse.
Yeah.
And then that's not political. That's just business, because I come from the angle, and everybody knows my position on this, who's watched my show long enough, is that I'm a panelist. And so I am a fan panelist, and I see it differently because I don't want to go and have a room that normally fills up 250, and maybe I get 200 people to be cut down to 100, because then it's not advantageous for me to build my brand. And so as an individual, I don't want my speaking ability to be cut in half, or the potential, on top of the fact that I have all these indie people who sell their books, and if you cut a con's attendance in half, indie already gets such a small percentage that the more you cut, every person you cut is one more percentage cut out. And it's one more point removed. And so at a certain point, if you had a 30,000 person con that got cut down to 15,000, it's not profitable for indie creators to sell their books and break even.
Yeah, especially not for what they charge for a table.
Exactly. If you cut the table price in half, then everything's half. But what's most likely happening is that table prices are remaining the same, or they're actually raising up table prices, and it becomes a nightmare. And all of a sudden, also, what I'm concerned about, and I know I have less money right now. I know the holiday season's coming up too, and that's the other thing that I'm concerned about, is that I have X amount of dollars, and I have to figure out what Christmas looks like. And I understand it is September 1st. The reason why I'm thinking about it now is because money's going to get a lot tighter in the next 3 months. So there's a lot of stuff going on. And so I'm just super curious what you guys think about that. Plus, where do you think it's all going digitally? Because obviously this is a digital product as well.
You're up.
That's a whole lot. All right, let's figure out where to start.
You don't have to answer any of it. You can answer all of it. You could change the question. It's completely up to you.
I mean, as far as cons go, it would be great to like get out there and meet people, because like the small one that we did in Williamsport, I made a couple of friends, and now I'm learning so much. Like the Kickstarter banner is significantly improved compared to the work I've done in the issues so far, and that's just because I've been talking for like 5 minutes to this guy that we sat next to, and obviously like having people pick it up at a con, that's one person that probably wouldn't have found us online because we're still like growing. But also having the delay where we can kind of build up an inventory or like figure out who we are, because we're still kind of doing that, is nice too. So that once everything calms down, because eventually it will. Eventually.
Maybe.
There's been pandemics before. Granted, it was in like the 20s, but eventually when everything calms down, we'll kind of have a good idea of like what we're making, where we're going. We'll have products like stickers, posters, maybe t-shirts, who knows. And I think having like a built-in delay is kind of nice, or at least for me. I don't know. I'm a very anxious person, so like having an excuse not to do something is kind of nice.
She's overly excited for stickers.
And so obviously, and then even going beyond this, and I probably should have asked this before because I actually am curious, because your goal's so low. You're gonna break your goal in the next day or two. The first week on Kickstarter is usually hot, and then the next 2 weeks are sort of rough, but you grow slowly, and then the last week is always hot on Kickstarter for most people. So you're probably going to break your goal, and you're going to be funded most likely in the next day or two. Statistically, since you're already where you're at, it's a no-brainer that you're going to get funded, you're going to get picked up the algorithm, because Kickstarter wants their percentage. And the more money you raise, obviously, the more they get. So that's something that I think is going to happen. But what do you have with stretch goals in mind, if any? Because it is tricky when you have such a low goal, what you're going to do with that. And so where is that going exactly with you guys?
What did I set for stretch goals? Give me 1 second. Yeah, that's right. I did backer stretch goals. I didn't exactly do like, how much we're going to make stretch goals. It's really about how many people back us. So we're going to do art prints. If we, reach the first 100 backers, we're going to do two 4x6 art prints, because they're cheap to make and they don't cost any extra for shipping, and they look really cool.
That's the other thing too, is that goals in general, it's the idea that, when I was speaking to Larry Higgins on Monday, and I know some people love Larry, some people hate Larry, it's all right. It's this idea that if you have postcards, stickers, bookmarks, small little mini prints, they don't add a hell of a lot to shipping, if at all. And so it's very important to understand that. So obviously that's something that's going out there. So if you're hearing about this and you're on a back, well, the more backers there are, the more stretch goals you get. And so very, very, very important on that point. I want to make it crystal clear that obviously this is a backer stretch goal, which means it's not dollars pledged. It's backer count. So super important on that front. So obviously there's a lot of stuff going on with this. And I don't want to ruin too much of the story. I probably ruined a good chunk of it already. So everybody can deal with that. So, but there's a lot of details that are not sort of said, and I think people are going to be very, very surprised with where it goes. And I only read the first half of issue 2, so obviously I don't even know. So I don't even know where the second half of issue 2 goes. But on that note, I'm going to be quiet, and I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to self-promote. So where can this be backed? Where can people find it on Facebook pages, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat, websites? other things, YouTube possibly, because those are big right now. And because obviously people want to follow this and people want to share it and people want to, express when and they want to back it. And they should back it. So where can people find it?
Everything, our Twitter and our Facebook are at Outlaws Comics. Our Instagram is now at Outlaws_comics because our 3,000 follower page got hacked and we can't get back into it and they don't answer emails anymore. So, if you want to go follow us there, we only have 500 followers now, and it's harder to get people to respond to your messages when you don't have the 3,000 followers anymore. As far as backing it, I connected the campaign to our website address. So if you just go to outlawscomics.com, it'll take you right to the Kickstarter.
And then obviously where can people find the both of you on social media as well? Because that's also important, whether it's other projects or they just want to include you in a post or anything of that nature.
I'm Allison Sheppard Art on Instagram, and I'm pretty sure it's the same on Facebook, although I haven't been posting on Facebook. It's probably been over a year. That's kind of unfortunate. We're Outlaws Comics on Facebook as well, and I'm involved with that. But yeah, mostly just Allison Sheppard Art on Instagram.
I only have personal Facebook. That's it. I don't like social media as a whole. I use it as a marketing tool. That's it.
No, I get it. I live on Facebook and I live on social media. I live on Twitter. So I'm on the exact opposite. I love it. And then I live on it as a marketer because it is so much more fun to have a Facebook group and a Facebook page than it is to have a personal Facebook. Like I want to get rid of my personal Facebook page because it serves me no use. My friend page, it's not useful. My Facebook page, beyond the most useful thing, Facebook groups, beyond useful. Running them are the best thing you can do. So much influence you could have in a Facebook group. But I digress. So having said all that, I do want to make this crystal clear where, it's this, I want to make it crystal clear that you have to support indie. And what that means is you have to back Kickstarters. And it makes a big difference, and every dollar matters. Every backer matters, digital, physical, buying the whole thing, not buying anything. And so obviously that's my dog, and then apparently she wants to go do something now. Everybody, very, very distracting. She's so cute. She's a King Charles Cavalier Spaniel. Totally unprofessional of me. But as I was saying, you have to back projects, and obviously monetary, it matters. And then going beyond that even further, you also have to share them out because you never know who's watching, when they're watching, how they're watching. And you never know, somebody might be looking for this project. Say, this sounds awesome. And you might not be interested in it per se, but your friends might be interested and they didn't know it existed because Facebook's algorithm, Twitter's algorithm, and Instagram's algorithm doesn't exactly help organic reach anymore. And so sharing it on your newsfeed is very, very important at this point. So obviously that's one thing you got to do. And then even going further, obviously back my sponsor if you're an indie comic creator, obviously back other people's Kickstarters. Also, you could buy me a coffee because I am broke and every dollar that I get, and I'm an indie content creator, matters as well. And I appreciate everybody who does that. I would like to be able to afford a Monster tomorrow morning, so I really need it. I am barely staying awake, or every once in a while, I'd like to be able to afford a 6-pack at the liquor store. So obviously, that's what buying me a coffee is all for. It, in all seriousness, though, it really does go back into the show in a lot of ways. And so obviously, but more important than that, obviously, I want people to back Kickstarters as well as just share content out because that's what makes the biggest difference and tells Facebook that, hey, this content is good. So on that note, I'm going to give both of you the final word.
No, I don't have one.
Yeah, I don't think I do either. I'm ready to see this thing successful, man, and it's been good to talk to you.
Yeah, on that note, I think it's a wrap.